Hello and thanks for tuning in and listening. This is Digging for the Truth with Ark and Neo, episode number 5, part 2 of our transhumanism discussion. My name is Ark, aka Arcologic, which is sort of a spin-off of the word archaeology or archaeological, which is fitting because that's what we do on this podcast, is we dig for the truth. It's also my rap stage name for those of you that listen to Destiny Lab. Truth music is what we specialize in. And tonight I am joined by my brother from the same mother and father, Neo, whose name is a spinoff of the name Neanderthal because of his extreme hairiness and his large brow region, reminiscent of Neanderthals. And, no, actually he came up with that name just like 2 minutes before our very first podcast we were doing, because we wanted to come up with some name. I guess we needed to have a name for our podcast, and he came up with the name Neo out of the Matrix, of course, who woke up to the realization that he was living in a false technology induced reality, if you remember, which is very fitting for tonight's subject as we dig deep into transhumanism. And we just enjoy talking about this same stuff, and so we decided to make a podcast, and here we are. And it's been a real blessing to hear from all of you guys and how the things we're discussing are introducing many of you to some new concepts and maybe even clarifying some of these deeper subjects to others of you, and maybe to others of you freaking some of you out. You might be freaked out, yeah. You might be scared, like my wife's best friend from work that tried to listen but simply said she could not listen because it was just far too strange. And it's not for everybody, so that's cool. It's all good. Whoever you are, wherever you are, however you're listening, by choice, by force, by pity, we thank you and hope you continue to listen. If any of you have any questions or comments, you can get a hold of us at destinylab@gmail.com or check out the website, destinylab.com. But in all seriousness, thank you all for listening and for your kind words of encouragement. And both of you that have sent emails, thank you. Mom and Dad, thanks, seriously, for listening. And as you know, both me and Neo enjoy talking and studying similar subjects. And tonight's episode is once again about transhumanism. This is going to be part 2 of our first discussion of our last podcast, and how it relates to not only golems and the concepts of the walking ouija boards like we discussed, but also the modern world and how we've been slowly introduced and prepared, it seems like, to be ready for this type of singularity, and how we're slowly being introduced through media and movies and stories throughout time, and prepared for ourselves and what some call the singularity, where mankind will actually merge with technology and machine, and our consciousness will be downloaded into a computer. These people want to become like gods. They want to be immortal. Sound familiar? It may, because it seems like in some form or another, this concept has been the plot of so many books and movies and video games and everything else you can think of. It just seems that this is one of the main things that reality has been leading up to through our modern culture and time, and even as we look at it through ancient times. And believe it or not, it may seem ridiculous, it may seem preposterous to even think that we could download our consciousness into a machine, but you may want to tune in tonight, and so you can better understand how these ideas may not be as far-fetched as you think. It may not be as far away as you think. And as many leading scientists, futurists, billionaires, and spiritual leaders, they've laid out what they call the 2045 initiative, saying that all this stuff will take place as laid out in a time frame they've created. And this is kind of creepy. It's kind of weird how it aligns to biblical prophecy as well. We're going to be looking into all of this. And are we creating a utopian society, or will this be the end of humanity as we know it? Tune in and find out. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Are you a truth seeker? Do you like hip-hop? Are you interested in the mysteries of mankind and nature and asking all those life-examining questions that demand answers? Then it may be your destiny to check out Destiny Lab at destinylab.com, where you'll find music that glorifies God and exposes the very roots and the lies and deceptions that we face today. Issues like creation versus evolution, aliens and UFOs in the spirit realm, the fallen angels and the Nephilim, transhumanism, the New Age, the occult, the Illuminati and the New World Order, and how all these things tie into one cohesive story and one ancient plan that is explained in the Word of God. 3 CDs are currently available at DestinyLab.com. 54 songs in all for only $25. Stay tuned for our 4th album, which is in the works now, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/DestinyLab. And consider giving a love offering to Michael Myers Video Ministry, who creates all of our amazing YouTube videos. And now, back to Digging for the Truth with Ark and Neo.
Hello everybody, welcome to Digging for the Truth with Ark and Neo. We're going to talk about transhumanism again. We're going to dig deep into the second part here of our original transhumanism discussion. There was so much to talk about that we felt the need to have a second podcast here. So, how you doing, Neo, tonight? You ready to dig deep here?
Oh yeah, doing great. You know, we just did a little Google internet search, and we found out that we're the number 2 hit when you look up transhumanism is our podcast, which is pretty incredible. That means people are actually viewing it. So
yeah, wow, that's awesome. Yeah, thanks everybody for checking it out and for supporting us. We've gotten a lot of great feedback, so looks like we're hitting the right spot and the right nerve of people who are wanting to hear the subjects that we're talking about. So
yeah,
we're thinking about next podcast here hitting a really relevant subject, which is the whole Noah movie, which just came out, which is
we can talk about that next time. That was pretty incredible. So
yeah,
but we'll save that for next time.
Yep, leaving on a cliffhanger here. But
yep.
Hey, the other thing that I had a couple questions on that I can't believe we never asked. I had a couple people get a hold of me asking, how big was the pumpkin that Neo grew? How big a pumpkin did you grow when we were talking about our pre-flood plant life?
Yeah.
What was the biggest pumpkin you ever grew?
Well, I haven't grown a pumpkin actually in the last 10 years. I've been too busy with kids and coaching in the summers and all that kind of stuff. But my biggest pumpkin is actually a little over 600 pounds.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah, it's still a really big pumpkin. And at that time, the world record was, I believe, around 1,100 pounds. So it's now, like we said before, 2,300 pounds.
Yeah.
Over a ton and getting bigger every single year.
Yeah.
And maybe someday I'll try to grow another pumpkin. But
didn't you guys have the opportunity to actually? Your kids are like on the Ellen show or something with the pumpkin. How did that all happen?
Yeah.
How did that all happen?
Yeah, it was actually a really cool turn of events. My kids are both pretty young, and they helped me grow the pumpkin and named it Shelob, because it was back when the Lord of the Rings movies came out, and you know, they'd put chicken poop on it and all this kind of stuff to kind of help it grow. And right. Yeah, but anyway, we heard on the radio that there was a way off.
You were like on the Ellen show too. How did that all come
okay,
about?
we'll just we'll enter it as a kid's pumpkin. So we threw it in the truck and we drove down there. It was in early October, and the kids actually got second place. And they were pretty young, and they did a newspaper article on it. And then a PBS program called Postcards from Buster contacted us and said, hey, we want to have your kids on a cartoon with to do this Postcards of Buster. It's about things that kids do in all the different states. And so they were actually on that. And then after the newspaper article ran, the Ellen show called us and said, hey, we want to get your pumpkin down here and on the show. And so they got a big truck for us, and we drove it down there and got on the Ellen DeGeneres show, and they're very nice and put us up at a nice hotel and let us go around the theater there and all kinds of neat stuff. And
that's cool.
And so it's just all in in a matter of a month, all these things happen, which is pretty incredible about this pumpkin. And so anyway, we're driving back, and all these people were just thumbs up with the big pumpkin as we were driving down there, 500-600 miles down there. So it was quite an experience, a real fun thing for the kids and and us.
Oh, I bet. No, that's pretty amazing to have all that happen just from growing a pumpkin. So,
you were in Hollywood also for a while, working on some different movies when you were younger too, I think.
Yeah. No, that's kind of ironic about this whole transhumanism thing. When I straight out of high school, I was into special effects makeup and making aliens and creatures. I was big into aliens at that point, and this is way before I was doing Destiny Lab. This was kind of my prodigal son journey. But in the early 90s, I had moved to Hollywood, which coincidentally is kind of interesting. Do you know the whole thing of Hollywood, where the word Hollywood comes from?
Actually, I don't know. Yeah.
It used to be called Hollywood Land.
Yeah.
And perhaps if you were a Harry Potter fan, you'd know that Harry Potter, his wand was made out of Hollywood. Which our holly branches are from the holly tree, and Pliny the Elder talked about the holly tree and how it had magical properties, and this is how they made the Druids as well, fabricated magic wands, which was the idea of magic wands comes from Druids and some of that black magic alchemy in the ancient times. But they initially made it out of the holly tree. And so we have, of course, the Hollywood, and then we have, of course, Mickey Mouse and his magical wand on the Sorcerer's Apprentice. And
that's pretty creepy too.
Yeah.
I've seen some things in that whole Sorcerer's Apprentice, and it's pretty occultic too, from way back when.
Yeah. I mean, Walt Disney was big into that, and of course, on the top of his wand is the star. And of course, what are Hollywood actresses and actors famous? They're called Hollywood stars, of course. And you get your star on the Walk of Fame in Hollywood. So it's kind of interesting how all these symbols tie together. And
I never even thought about that, but you're right. It's kind of like after I first saw all the symbolism of Washington D.C. and all the structures and how they were laid out. Probably the same thing happened in Hollywood.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a huge movement of the I Am movement was the group that started in Hollywood for the most part, these occultists and New Agers and the original kind of elitist mentalities, and they were big into all that kind of stuff. But, it's kind of interesting. The first movie when I was down in California that I worked on was The Lawnmower Man, which if people have seen that movie, The Lawnmower Man, this was one of the first movies that used CGI technology, and it was based off of Stephen King's 1975 short story called The Lawnmower Man. And it's about this guy that was kind of retarded, and he was cut the lawn for some scientist who is big into transhumanism or the idea of merging man into technology, into a machine, and he basically plugged this guy into the machine, and of course he wanted to become a god. But what's really interesting is the original story of The Lawnmower Man by Stephen King. It wasn't really anything like the movie. So the original story is about this guy who gets hired to cut his lawn, and the serviceman who arrives for the job has a lawnmower that mows the lawn by itself while he crawls naked behind the lawnmower.
What?
He crawls naked behind the lawnmower eating the grass. And then the serviceman, he's actually a satyr who worships the Greek god of Pan.
A satyr? Oh.
And when the guy tries to call the police, the mower and his owner ritually kill him in a sacrifice to the god Pan. That's literally what Stephen King's Lawnmower Man was originally about.
The mower kills him too?
The mower and this
Wow.
creepy guy. So, and so the film's original script was written by director Brett Leonard, was called Cyber God, and had nothing to do with Stephen King's short story or anything. He just decided to combine his original Cyber God script and then find some, name, which is Stephen King was a big name. And here was a story that he had written that had nothing to do with, hadn't done a movie yet. So he grabbed onto that movie, and so he made The Lawnmower Man. But it differed so much from the original source that Stephen King actually sued the filmmakers of the movie. And he won the lawsuit because it was so ridiculously non-like his. Not that his original story was any better, because his original story was even creepier. Yeah. But it's interesting how the original story ties into this occultism and this idea as well. So I don't know if that's just coincidence or not. But
did that have? If I remember right, the retarded guy went into the computer, but then got unbelievably smart.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of what happened? And then he was basically they had to shut him down or something because he was
he wanted to become a god. I mean, he was becoming all powerful, and that's what he was saying in the movie. He said, "I am God," and it was actually the film had a lot of several common elements with a 1959 movie called Flowers of Algernon. Which same principle. It dealt with a mentally disabled guy who lost his whose intelligence was amplified by technology up to like genius type levels. And so coincidentally, Johnny Depp's coming out with basically this exact same type of movie called Transcendence, which I don't know if you've seen the previews.
I saw the previews right before I watched the Noah movie.
Oh man.
So I was going, wow, this ties into exactly what we were just talking about.
Yeah. So and here's Johnny Depp, who coincidentally, of course, is an occultist as well. He's one of the guys that helped fund the lawyers to get out Damien Echols and the Memphis Three, these guys that were charged with ritually killing children. Johnny Depp and Peter Jackson and the Dixie Chicks and Eddie Vedder and a lot of other guys got on the bandwagon there of celebrities to help get this guy out of prison. And now Damien Echols, who was the leader that supposedly killed these kids, is like he's a celebrity. He's tours the country and does speeches and writes books and gives autographs. So, but anyway, this movie Transcendence. It's all about this guy who invents this technology, downloads his consciousness into the machine because he's gonna die. He comes down with this terminal illness, and so he wants to become kind of the guinea pig into the machine. So it's the same concept as like the movie Chronicle, where those guys, become all powerful beings, and how the power kind of goes to their head, or the movie Firestarter, or the movie Carrie as well was the same storyline.
Basically, all the comic book stories with all these superheroes are all basically the same thing too. They've evolved to get these certain aspects, and I remember the last Wolverine movie. He goes to Japan, and the guy who's on his deathbed wants to basically take the Wolverine's powers and put it in him so he can live forever.
Yeah.
So it's the exact same concept.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never been huge into comics, but the little that I have got into it, and the little that I've studied from people that are big into it, they say comic books of all genres of media are the most occult-ridden of them all, as far as how deep they get with the occult aspects of their storylines and stuff. So it's kind of interesting how all these authors are just tied into these same type of ideas and have studied all these kind of, Aleister Crowley and Edgar Allan Poe and Manly P. Hall and Blavatsky, all these people that they're just all into. It's strange.
Yeah, and it seems like this is gone on for quite a while. Like you said, that the science fiction of one generation is the reality of the next. And, like I said, I think of the previous one that I remember the concept called cryogenics, where they would freeze, bodies or heads to hopefully someday preserve them, and bring their body back, from the frozen state, kind of like the Han Solo type thing where he was frozen in carbonite or something and brought back later.
That's right.
It's basically the same concept, but again, people want to live forever. And you were saying Michael Jackson.
Yeah. Well,
and I think there's a lot of people.
Yeah, there's so many people that they've said even they end up faking their death supposedly so they can go off and live forever somewhere or whatever. I mean, it's just interesting how all these stories come up. But
wasn't there the old movies, Ray Harryhausen movies? Yep. Yeah. He was the guy that did the clay sculptures and did the stop motion animation to create these monsters and different things like that. Didn't some of his things kind of tie in as well?
Yeah, the whole Greek thing of Jason the Argonauts and the bronze statue Talos, at the end, the giant bronze statue that they fight is kind of like a Golem type character if you think about it. They have these characters throughout history of these terrifying statues that come to life, and it seems to be throughout different cultures and times that these ideas kind of come together, and it all ties into history just repeating itself and leading up to this ultimate storyline. And it seems like that Hollywood kind of creates reality, like a lot of people have said. And I mean, you look at the early Twilight Zone and Outer Limits; they were amazingly full of these ideas.
Oh yeah. Now, is there kind of two different things in this transhumanism movement? We talked a little bit about the golems and things like that, where people made inanimate objects where they would create, like a robot type thing. Is that kind of the first stages? And then the second stage is to actually add human consciousness to that creation. Is that it's like a two-step process? You got to make either a golem, or nowadays you're going to make a robot. And then the second thing is somehow get the person inside of that creature or thing that was created so that you can live forever or have a better body or be able to do more than the normal human.
Yeah, I think it's going to be emerging. Like, they're kind of setting the stage through technology, but then they're also kind of throwing out concepts that kind of tie in these ideas that are spiritual, that seem to almost kind of prepare the masses to be ready to accept these things that we think are scary now, but they're not really scary once it happens. The idea of accepting some sort of entity or being that's smarter than us to guide and direct us somehow through a machine, or even through our own minds, or some sort of interface, seems to be kind of an acceptable thing, especially if they can package it as some sort of universal knowledge that you just tap into, kind of like the Akashic records or whatever, as they sometimes call it.
But. Now, what about, you look at the video games today, the virtual reality in these games is just unbelievable. And many of the games kind of integrate a person into a robot now. There's a brand new game coming out. Can't remember what it's called. I think it's called Titan something. Again, the Titan. And you basically are a person that gets inside of this giant robot, kind of like the ones that you saw on the third Matrix movie, where they got into these and then they controlled the giant robots.
Interesting.
But they might be, maybe that's the first stage, is to get them used to using by playing these video games, getting used to seeing how a virtual reality might be better than the real reality.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's, I don't know if you heard here recently, I think it was just here last week, that Facebook announced that they bought the Oculus Rift for $2 billion. And For those people that don't know what the Oculus Rift is, the Oculus Rift is a headset gaming system, a set of goggles or a helmet type thing that you wear over your head, and it's able to, as you turn your head, look every direction, that it actually follows your movement. So if you're looking upwards, you're looking at the sky. You look downwards, you can actually see your shoes, your body, your virtual body. So you're transplanted into a virtual world, kind of like the holodeck on Star Trek. And not only do they have the Oculus Rift, they also have what's called an omnidirectional treadmills. So you're actually strapped into this circular treadmill that allows you to turn and run and walk any direction with standing in one place. So you imagine yourself into this thing, and they have guys running, jumping, squatting, shooting with guns. I mean, it actually looks like a whole lot of fun. But that's kind of the first steps. I mean, why would Facebook buy this? Here's the question. Here's Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, who's directly connected with Google, Ray Kurzweil, the head of Google, the head of transhumanism, all these people jumping on board to this, bringing forth this type of technology. And what it is the Oculus Rift. They want people to be able to communicate with this now. So everybody has these communication devices where we're in virtual reality, talking with each other, interacting with people one-on-one, and get kind of the masses used to these ideas. So step by step to step, they can incrementally introduce us to more and more ideas.
That brings up a thought that I had about, what their marketing principles are at Google and Facebook, is that they actually have a predictive algorithms that they, as they're watching you basically do everything that you do on your computer, they can accurately predict what your next move is before you actually do it, because they've got your profile. You're so predictable. You get on the computer, check your email, you go to Facebook, go to eBay, go to Amazon. Whatever your interests are and the things that you do, it can virtually predict, and I think it's up to like 78% accuracy what your next move is before you do it.
Yeah,
just by studying you, and it's creepy, is what it is. But that's literally what they're doing.
Yeah, totally. No, I think that's exactly, the steps that they're taking. It's interesting because technology is growing at such a fast rate that it's just continuing to accelerate and snowball effect to where it's not growing at regular steps that people understand things to grow at. It's growing at exponential steps. It's doubling, tripling, quadrupling, like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. It's pretty soon you're up to 1 billion in no time, and that's how technology. That's how fast it's growing. It's not growing in regular.
Yeah, it's not linear.
Yeah, exactly. The first few hundred years of technology, if you look at back in bow and arrow and stone and spear, took a few thousand years to change it all. And then you have the printing press that took a couple hundred years to get out there, and then the telephone took about 50 years to get around the globe, and then once they got cell phones, it was 10 years before you got people in Africa using cell phones.
Yeah.
So it's growing at a faster and faster rate. You can see how it speeds up, and that's kind of the thing that this transhumanist movement and Kurzweil has used as a measurement device to make this data and lay out this data line of the 2045 initiative,
Oh, yeah.
And that's what's so scary is I think they've figured out a lot of this stuff already. And they're changing every, month. If that, every week you're seeing new things come out.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not only this, the Facebook things didn't only buy this whole Oculus Rift, they're also tapped into this whole thing called Vicarious, which is basically the idea of recreating the neocortex of the brain of a person.
Oh, wow.
All these billionaires got into this, and Mark Zuckerberg, of course, Ashton Kutcher, PayPal billionaire Peter Thiel, all these people are big into this as well. And why do they want to do this? What's the point of doing this, What's their agenda behind this?
Well, let me ask you this question. I don't know if you thought about this, but, Obamacare that's came out that's basically has forced every American to be part of a healthcare system. So everyone must have healthcare or they're fined,
Yeah, sure.
So everybody now in the United States has healthcare. But what are they going to do with it? That once you're in this system, because that's really what it's, the system.
Yeah.
Are they going to force upon you things like gene therapy, and they're going to say, hey, your kid's going to have this type of deficiency.
Yeah.
We should just stop this pregnancy now, because they can predict that now. Or they could say, if it's really getting as far as what you're saying, they could say, we can make your kid 6'5".
Yeah.
Or we can make your kid be smarter than other kids. Don't you want that? It's only $15,000 extra, and we can give them the smart gene.
Well, they could say if you didn't do it, that you would be a child abuser. Actually, they could say you're not giving your child a fair chance in life. They would overrule that.
Yeah, it's just there's got to be something more sinister behind the whole Obamacare system, and that could be a tie-in. Is that they're all tied together to somehow change us genetically, just like was been Satan's plan throughout the ages. That he's always been involved in genetic manipulation from the Nephilim to Goliath, and now the new type of genetic manipulation that's here and now, right now. And like Matthew says, as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. And this might be really what's going to happen in the end times, is this genetic manipulation.
Well, and humans are the ones actually willingly making all this happen. We're basically accepting these things as perks. If you look at the agenda of how they put things out there, like tagging in Facebook, hey, you can tag your friend now. You can tag their face. Well, you're basically creating a database of faces and then attaching the fingerprint of your name to that database. So that's what they're creating is facial recognition, not only facial recognition, but facial understanding of the characteristics on your face. So if they see you making too big of a frown or you look upset, they may have to just arrest you and question you because, maybe you're thinking about doing bad things. So, this
sounds like there's a couple with Eagle Eyes is one of them.
Yep.
A couple movies about that too, where, most of them have been shown to be
pre-crime.
Pre-crime. And then there was the Tom Cruise had a movie as well, where he actually had to get an eyeball transplant to get past the security systems because it was so ingrained.
Sure. Yes, creating enhancements, Yeah.
Now, you were talking about this initiative, the 2045 initiative. Is that tied to the Millennial Project?
I'm not sure. What's the Millennial Project? Tell me about that.
Well, the Millennial Project is basically where they want to colonize other planets. And
okay.
It
like
ties
terraforming.
and because, they say that we're overpopulated.
Well, there's the Venus Project as well. And, there's all kinds of different spin-offs. Yeah, there's a lot of out there.
Yeah, I think this Millennial Project, they are talking about that humans aren't designed to live in space, so they're going to do some transhumanism to change them so that they can live in different types of environments.
How wonderful of them to do that.
Yeah,
Look, we're just looking ahead for your own safety. That's like the perks that they're announcing at Disney now for the safety of your kids. You can now buy a tag, or it's like a bracelet database, that basically wraps around your kid's hand, and it attaches all their interests and all of their favorite things. And as you walk around, it also is your room key, it's your credit card, it's your fast pass at all the Disney parks. And it holds all your information on there, so
everything.
They can track where you're at, or if kids get lost, they can find you.
Yeah,
it's all
or they can find them. Yeah, all for safety. It's always for your good, isn't it?
Oh, and I'm sorry, you can't remove that. Once you put it on there, it's on for your.
It's there forever. Is it? So that might be part of what's called the cybernetics, where they're actually instead of manipulating your DNA or actually uploading, your conscious into a robot, that they actually put robotics into you. And
Sure, yeah.
and they're actually, some of the things are good. I mean, tiny things like getting new cybernetic ears, where they've got these cochlear implants where you can hear things better. I mean, those are
Sure.
helping people, but that's basically the first part to be a cyborg.
Well, yeah. So here's the question, though: what happens when they make ears that are better, eyes that can see further, feet that can run faster, like the Blade Runner, for instance? This guy, the Blade Runner, they called him because he is a double amputee, and he wanted to compete in the Olympics.
Yeah, $6 million man.
Yeah. He's a double amputee, and he had these fake blades that were put on his feet to run. He was a sprinter for the Olympics, and he started running faster than regular people, and he wanted to be at the regular Olympics, and they argued that he couldn't do it because he had an unfair advantage because of the springiness of his legs. So, I mean, there's people out there right now that are huge into body modification. There's people already that have implanted magnets into their fingers that claim that they have what they call a seventh sense instead of a sixth sense. They walk into a room and they can actually feel the actual, I guess, magnetic properties or electrical rhythms of a room and different things. And so, if somebody wants to get better vision, and they know that it can be done, heck, I'll pluck my eyeball out and get
a new one,
eagle eyes put in, and and then step by step by step. So it's like, when do you draw the line? And I think that's where it gets scary. Yeah,
I mean, it will never end.
Yeah.
A lot of movies also they talk about the autonomous self-replicating robots, where robots that build other robots. And I know there's been a lot of the scary movies, the iRobot, and many of the other ones where, once you set something in motion that can basically create itself.
Yeah.
Well, who's to stop it?
Totally. Well, especially when you get down to the nanobot level.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you think of that being impossible, but when you get down to a nanobot, something that's as small as, a couple atoms, a few atoms across, how much mass does it take to create that? It's just so small, it can basically be like a self-replicating cell almost.
Yeah. Well, that's called like the holy grail of robotics. That's what they're trying to do, is that, the molecular nanotechnology, they basically want it where you could make a machine that could make other machines because you wouldn't need any labor. You could basically make them for free. Once you've got that first system set up, and it's, like you said, it's so small that it would take almost no energy to do it, and yet it could just produce 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and just continue to make whatever thing that it's supposed to make.
Yeah. And, people don't realize that they are already printing with atoms, atom by atom. They can manipulate atoms at this time already. And, the other thing is they're impossible to destroy something that small. It's kind of like when you try to kill a flea. You ever try to kill a flea with your hand? You can't squish it, because it's so small you can't grab it. Well, if you get something down to the molecular level, you try to smish it between your fingers, it's going to fit between the cracks of your fingerprints, So they're impossible to destroy unless you can actually grab it.
Yeah.
And if you got this stuff, they call it the gray goo, is the word that they use for nanobots that can self-replicate, because at some point,
it would never stop.
If these things get out of control, it would become like a swarm of billions of grains of sand,
Yeah.
And so you imagine like a swarm of insects that could take on any texture or shape as well, that actually worked as a hive mind. I mean, imagine a plane could drop out a swarm of cameras, Wi-Fi cameras, that also had audio and video capabilities that were basically distributing all that information worldwide. And they just dumped these out around every single city or whatever. And it was like dust. And so you could, if people would be breathing it in, it would go into every ventilation system or whatever. And then they could actually activate these things to track and know everything, not necessarily working as one by one individual cameras, but actually working as, like I said, a hive type of a mind to completely follow people or track people or do whatever. I mean, that sounds really crazy. People think, oh yeah, right. You know, they're not going to create things like that. That small, that's impossible, you know. Well, in October 26, 2001, keep in mind this is in 2001, an article at the Ecology Magazine's website claimed they're just months away from seeing the Pentagon funded a project of designing sand grain size surveillance sensors called Smart Dust that would be sprinkled over enemy camps, and then using lasers to communicate sensors would transmit that intelligence data back to the home base for interpretation. So this is back in 2001 of what they were telling people. You know, you imagine what's really going on behind the scenes that they're not telling us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
how far have we progressed since then? Yeah. Yeah, you know, because I've heard about the green goo or the gray goo a long time ago on the Art Bell show. They talked about that it could, you know, if you programmed these nanobots to basically eat everything and then replicate, you know, they could basically eat the universe is what could happen, you know, if there's nothing to stop it, you know. And, you know, we heard the thing where they grew the ear on the rat. But now, I think you mentioned earlier that they actually have printers, these 3D printers. They're printing human tissue. They're printing livers they're just printing it cell by cell, and it's actually creating living tissue. They print skin. You know, they don't have to do the skin grafts anymore. They can actually print your own skin and just stick it on you and grow it in a laboratory. I mean, it's amazing.
You know, to put this stuff into perspective, the people that don't think this stuff is real, I know we were talking about earlier of cameras the size of sand and how the Pentagon was funding a project like that. Well, in 2011, it was announced by a German Institute of Microintegration the development of a camera with a lens that is 1 by 1 by 1.5 millimeters in size, which is roughly the size of a grain of salt. So here we have a camera the size of a grain of salt that they've already made in 2011. And this camera, you can hardly see it with the human eye. You can barely see it's the size. So they have pictures of it. You can look it up. And it's also extremely cheap to manufacture. In fact, it's so cheap they consider it disposable. And that's the other thing that people don't realize. When things become this small, you don't need a lot of matter to reproduce more of them. You know, right now, if you want to make a car, you want to make another car, you got to, you know, get all that metal, get all that plastic, get all that stuff. I mean, you have to have a lot of matter to make it. When things become on the atomic level, there's little to no matter. There's little to no power that is needed to power something that small. There's little to no way to destroy something that's that small because it's so small. Yeah. So all these things in together, and not only that, things act differently when they're that small. When something that small, it can fly around. You know, it's a piece of dust can float in the wind where, you know, a helicopter can't. You know, a drone can't float in the wind. You know, when things become microscopic, things actually act. They're not affected on the same level as we are. It's like a water droplet. If you look at a water droplet under the microscope, they can form as a ball. You know, you never see water forming a ball, you know, that's as big as a basketball. That's never going to happen. But on the molecular level, things react differently. And so the same thing is true for computers and these things that they're making. They're actually able to make these things in completely new ways that we haven't comprehended. They're not using, you know, tubes and amplifiers and all these things that we look at technology as being. That's not how it's going to be. They have graphene material now, a nanobot the size of a cell that's injected, or you know, millions of them injected into your body that are just machines. I mean, that's what our body is full of blood cells and different machines. We're made up of all kinds of cells that have engines in them. The flagellum motor is the most complex motor ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
God made. It's on single-celled organisms. It's what propels them. And it can revolve up to 100,000 revolutions per minute and then go instantly backwards on a quarter turn. It's like nothing moves like that. But if we can now duplicate that through biomimicry, copying God's design and create man-made versions of these machines, which is exactly what DNA is. It's a code, exactly what we are. We are machines. Our body is made up of digitized, electrical impulses. I mean, they're able to map these things now, and it's growing so fast. It's like I said, they're getting to the point where they're now just saying it's going to happen. Where it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of just when.
Yeah, this reminds me of the old. This is back in I believe the 70s, where the guy did a brain transplant on a monkey, and the monkey was alive for several days. He actually transplanted a brain, and the new body accepted it for a little bit and was living.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think they've gotten to a completely different, thinking, that instead of, trying to do this, brain transplant like the old cryogenics type system, they're trying to do mind uploading, where they're, like you said, digitize your consciousness and put it into a machine. You think that is really the ultimate, is putting your consciousness into a machine?
Well, here's what they're doing. They've created in Japan. They've created dream recording devices.
Huh.
And that sounds crazy. It sounds, how could somebody record, images in someone's brain? But this is how they've done it. What they do is they put someone inside of an MRI machine, and they allow them to go to sleep, and they wake them up every couple hours, and they ask them, "What were you dreaming about?" And the person tells them, I was running through a forest, or I was taking an exam, or I was driving a car, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they'll map whatever things that the MRI shows. They'll map the synapses of the firing of the brain, and then they'll match that up with the person, what they're saying. And then they'll show that person a whole bunch of images, thousands of images, and they'll map those images. And they just do this for months and months and months until they actually build up a actual database of images that relate to the actual triggering of what that person is dreaming. Now they have actually, and you can look this up, look up Japanese dream videos. They actually attach this to a YouTube database. So every video out there, every image that's out there on YouTube, Facebook, that's why I think they want us to upload social media. It's because we're creating for them a perfect database for this whole type of mind-reading system. So imagine not only they're packaged as dream interpretation when it's really mind reading, because that's what they're doing. They're seeing what type of firings going off in our brains, what type of those things trigger pictures, and what these pictures line up with. And so
they basically are they're looking at the electrical impulses in what part of the brain those electrical impulses are firing, and they basically create a map of your brain. And if let's say the cerebral cortex, in 25% of it has electrical impulses going on in the fourth quadrant or whatever, then that symbolizes that you're seeing whatever. And so and are they actually able to predict, like, in other words, if they see
70%, you can watch the videos. It's unbelievable. They show what the person is dreaming, and then they have another thing where they can actually show them a real picture and show you an interpretation of what they're seeing, so you can actually see real time how close it is. Exactly.
So it can go both ways. So in other words, the person can look at a picture and they can look at the brain diagram, or they can look at the brain diagram and reproduce the picture of what they're actually looking at without even knowing what they're looking at, just based upon the data of the brain.
Exactly.
Wow. That's incredible.
And this is off of just very limited data. So it's just a matter of getting more data.
That is complete
and
mind
more
control.
Information. And then once that is all cross-referenced, then they just have a map. And they just like tap in, oh, here, we want to scare this guy. Lion, you attack this guy, or, you know.
Oh, wow.
And you just see a lion attacking you or whatever. I mean, they can just program whatever virtual thing they want you to see based upon the map of the brain. And, I mean, people think it's not possible, but they're already doing it. Look it up.
Wow.
You can see the videos.
Man. That is crazy.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's what I think the whole idea of social media is. And get this, do you know who created the word social media? Phrase, our good friend Pierre Teilhard, who is, you know, the big Jesuit priest we talked about in our earlier podcast, who termed the phrase omega point, which was the, you know, singularity of the 50s and 60s.
You know, this reminds me of a verse in the book of Revelation, in Revelation 18:13. It's talking about the final kingdom and what types of things that they sell, and they talk about all these things sell. And there's a strange thing there that they sell the souls of men. I mean,
wow.
Who knows? And I've always been
Total Recall
intrigued about what are they talking about. How can you sell, you know, a soul of a man? And maybe this is what it's all about. Maybe that's a connection to this verse in Revelation 18:13.
Well, it's interesting because I think people have always sold their souls to the devil, as we know. But this is a way to like open doorways or portholes or gateways through automatic means. It's kind of like the whole thing of sleep paralysis. This is a really other interesting tie-in. If you look at the MK Ultra stuff and some of the things that they have out there online, they have these videos out there online that are created for literal mind control programming techniques. And they have like alternating flashes of light combined with sounds that they're called binary beats and and it somehow reacts to the brain. And this is used as a spiritual weapon to gain access to someone's mind. And people that don't have, you know, the Holy Spirit to guard them against these things are literally putting themselves into an automated form of sleep paralysis. That point in which our bodies and our minds are like in a hypnotic state or completely our guard is let down. And there's these videos put out and they're titled like, you know, connect to your spirit guide or connect to your God force. And then there's other ones that are basically show the exact same thing of these flashes of light. And it says, you know, take a virtual hallucinogenic trip. Open your mind to aliens. Let your demon into you. You know, there's some that just tell it what it is, that say, hey, invite this demon into you.
Oh, wow.
And then there's numerous testimonies of people getting messed up by watching these videos and having demonic attacks after watching these things and hearing voices in their heads.
Yeah.
And then that night having night terrors, demonic attacks, and sleep paralysis. And this is what's happening in these like full immersion videos. And I think that people immerse themselves into these demonically inspired programs, and they don't have any idea. They're just wanting, you know, some kid browsing the net or whatever, and they're basically taking a full-on shamanic DMT trip that in the past they'd have to take, you know, drugs to do. They're actually have found a way to just activate the mind instantly into those mentalities, and I think it's totally connected to this whole MK Ultra and government black ops, because you'll hear these overlapping things, and one of the big things that I've noticed is this idea of these sounds, you know, these humming or buzzing sounds, and the people that have, for instance, so-called UFO abductee experiences. Very similar. They tell this exact same thing of this controlled matrix or a dream machine that accesses people during their sleep and programs them with these universal themes and storylines that's kind of a mixture of the demonic realm and aliens and the government and reptilians and all these things, that just are just so out there and crazy. It's hard to say what's up from down. And there's actually this certain semi-famous comedian out there that has a podcast of his own, and he, interestingly enough, is into the occult. He also puts out dozens of videos on YouTube, calls himself the Dead NASA Scientist. And he, which is interesting, correlating to Jack Parsons, who we talked about in our previous podcast, who was a dead NASA occult scientist that danced around singing hymns to Pan before they did rocket launches. So,
wow. Oh yeah, we talked about this in the the first one, yeah.
Yeah, but this guy calls himself the Dead NASA Scientist, and so he makes these videos that have all these patterns and sounds of all kind of creepy images to mess with people's minds, and he claims he's and he does them secretly. He doesn't say who he is, but a lot of people know exactly who it is. This is Duncan Trussell and he has his own podcast, and he's on one of Joe Rogan's good buddies. But I actually have a little clip here I want to play for you that's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And this clip is of a guy who listened, and you can go online and actually find several of these of people warning people, do not watch these guys' videos. And I'm not, and I almost hesitate to put this out, and I'm telling everybody right now, don't go and watch this. We don't want to open ourselves up to that, but it's kind of interesting what this guy has to say here. So I'll let you listen to this, and you can tell me sort of what you think as well.
What I want to talk to you guys about is NASA Gym 108. If you're a conspiracy theorist who's been on YouTube, I'm sure, at least to a certain degree, I'm sure you've probably heard of NASA Gym 108. He's basically some guy who goes on the internet and posts incredibly weird videos that make no apparent sense whatsoever, and they have these weird buzzing noises in it. And all I have to say is, do not watch NASA Gym's 108 video, because I don't know if you're going to believe me, but one thing I think NASA Gym's video does is, I think what his video does is it opens you up to demonic possession. Because one time I remember I watched one of his videos, and after the day, I swear to God, the night or the day after I watched his video, I had a demonic possession. All of a sudden, I was just sleeping in my bed, minding my own business, and out of nowhere, the door opens, and I felt this energy, preventing me from moving. I felt like sleep paralysis, and this never happened to me before. This happened after I watched one of his videos. And it just entered me, and ever since then, I've been under mind control. I've been experiencing a lot of deja vu. I've been feeling buzzing sounds in the back of my brain. I've even been seeing dreams of the future, little small snippets of the future. I've constantly been getting into trouble. A lot of weird stuff has been happening, and I feel deja vu. I'll think of something and I'll see it on later, which is an indication of some form of mind control. The thing is putting thoughts into my mind and controlling me like a robot, basically, subconsciously. So I have to say, if you don't want to be demonically possessed, I don't know if this applies to everybody. I know some people probably have a stronger aura preventing them from things like this from happening to them, but not unless you want this to happen to you, I recommend you do not watch his videos. It's bad for you. I would even go as far as to say you should even flag his videos, because it's definitely not safe. Because why does it have these weird sounds in it? And these from what I've heard, these sounds that they use in these sorts of things can open you up to the pathway of demonic possession or something. I've heard about that sort of stuff. So just do not watch his videos. This is what's happened to me. Ever since I watched one of his videos, I've been silent about it for some time, and I just recommend you do not watch any of his videos. It's bad for you.
So it's, again, like the Matrix. Yeah, they flatline your brainwave or something. I can't remember what they call it, either the alpha or the beta waves.
That's what this thing that this guy put out that basically somehow has some sort of programming effect.
Yeah.
And here's an interesting side story to that. In 1981, there was a game put out called Polybius, This is supposedly an arcade game that was only put out in Portland, Oregon. And it was only put out like in 1 or 2 arcades, and supposedly caused its players to go insane from playing it.
Wow.
And they suffered such intense stress and horrific nightmares, suicidal tendencies, that some of these people supposedly disappeared off the face of the globe. Nobody found them. And then a short time later, after this game was introduced into these 2 or 3 arcades, the game just totally came up missing. So according to the story, the game was like super, super popular. Like people became addicted to it as well. Like people like either became like totally freaked out about it or like totally addicted to it, like a drug. And so people would like line up around it and like have fights over it to play. And so, and then what was crazy is it was followed by clusters of these stories of visits from Men in Black type ideas that these guys would show up and take the information or data from the machine. And
Wow.
they collected this data for some sort of testing of psychoactive, some sort of like government program.
Oh yeah, I'm seeing it right here.
In some versions of the story, the players like totally had amnesia, insomnia, had epileptic fits and seizures. Some players actually stopped playing video games altogether and then became like anti-gaming activists, like speaking out against all video games. And so it's like,
yeah, it's a real game. I mean, I'm looking at one on the internet right now, a photograph of a real machine.
yeah.
So back in the arcade days.
Yeah, they found the information on it. It was really hidden. It was actually put out by a German company called Sinosocialism, and the name of Sinosocialism, or whatever that says, means deletion, erasure of senses. Deletion or erasing of senses.
Wow.
That's what it means, to sense delete. Sensolation means sense delete.
So deleting your.
So this Polybius machine, it was, what's really crazy is was actually featured on a Simpsons episode. This Simpson episode called "Please Homer, Don't Hammer 'Em." In the background of 2006 episode, you can see this Polybius game in the background.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know the people involved with the Simpsons are huge occultists. The guy was the guy that does the 12 voices. Most of the voices on The Simpsons was Bohemian Grove.
Yeah, I saw it.
Totally goes to the Bohemian Grove and hangs out. I mean, he has videos talking about him going there and hanging out. He actually did a spoof movie about the Bohemian Grove. These guys are all deep into this stuff. But yeah, this Polybius thing is pretty creepy. I mean, it's all, like I said, connected to this binaural beats. And that was something actually discovered all the way back in 1839 by this guy. What are you playing? Binary beats in the background there? What's that sound?
Oh, yeah, I think it's a phone going off. So you can hear that? Yep, it's coming in. We're trying to...
They're tapping
subliminal
in.
messages, yep, they're coming after us.
But, yeah, it sort of puts people in a type of...
like a trance or something?
Hypnotic type state. Yeah, they call it actual trance music even. These people that go to the rave, things like that. They actually call it trance music. There's actually, they call it virtual drugs out there that are these sounds that you can buy, like that supposedly you can listen to, and some of them are just called creepy things. Like there's one called the Gates of Hades. And people listen to them. There's videos of kids listen to them on YouTube, and they look like they start freaking out, like they hear something, like seeing a ghost or something, but they're just listening to sounds. So,
well, it sounds like the old cartoons. I can't remember what the some old Japanese cartoon that would give people seizures, and that's what's caused all these video game manufacturers to put the disclaimer before you play the game that this could give you seizures because of the flashing lights and all this kind of stuff. And I can't remember what video game it was that induced seizures, but it was an old, not a video game, but actually a cartoon that and it also had subliminal messages in it, like go, buy me. I'm, ask your parents to buy this doll or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff out there that we don't realize that we actually grew up on, things within cartoons that people don't know about. I think it's all over. I think they use it in movies, they use it in media, and I don't even think necessarily the people making it always necessarily know what they're even putting into stuff.
Yeah.
If they're open to...
I think it was called Pocket Monsters is what it was called at one time.
Oh.
And it was Nintendo put out a game, and the kids would just go into these strange, seizures based on the lights.
Wow.
But, it's...
Yeah, I think it's connected. There's, here's an actual guy that actually, I wrote down an actual guy explaining what he feels.
Oh, okay.
He says, a sudden feeling that something was definitely working, and then a progression of numbness in my body. I felt deeper, then a tingling all over my body, a sensation of vibration, and then I became very scared, as if it was like a feeling when you're going to pass out or faint. I also felt like I was having sleep paralysis. There's the sleep paralysis again. After fighting with it, I became calm and continued to give in and breathe as deep as possible. I felt myself falling out of my body, but I didn't try to leave my body. I kept right with it. Anyway, all I can say is that having strong effects, and this does work by watching it. Many kids within raves have had similar experiences by binary beats introduced into music that makes people go into hypnotized types realities in a trance-like state.
Oh, wow.
And that's why they call it trance music.
Yeah. Yeah, Pokemon was the other one that did that, but yeah, sounds like this has been happening for a long time, throughout cartoons, now video games, sounds like they're really going after the young on a lot of these things for their experimentation.
Totally. Yeah, I don't think kids are not as on guard to recognize. I've turned on videos before that started having flashing images or signs and literally just felt, through the Holy Spirit, that something's sick here, something's wrong here, and I just turn it off because there's no reason to expose ourselves to it. I know we're protected by the Holy Spirit, but it's just you can get a sense.
Oh yeah.
That something's not right there, and it's somehow triggering things that are not good. So, I think a lot of this is tapped into. You look at the way people in ancient times were able to get into these same type of altered states through swaying back and forth, or playing drums, or chanting, or twirling in circles, all types of repetitive movements. It's like, it reminds me of, I went to school with this kid that came from an abusive home. It was kind of a sad story, but I remember, whenever he was alone or on the bus, or he was just kind of alone and kind of zoned out, he'd start just rocking back and forth really quick. And I've seen other people kind of do this, and it's supposedly attached to kids not having a lot of contact as a child, like really young ages. And you'll see the same type of thing in caged animals or mice who are pet in cages. They'll go back and forth. And supposedly this actually puts them into kind of a self-induced hypnotic state, similar to drumming, twirling, any type of chanting, any type of repetitive, automatic. It becomes automatic is what they're trying to do. Because if you continue doing something over and over and over again, the act of doing it becomes, you forget that you're doing it. It becomes unconscious. And so it's the idea of that they talk about within these deprivation tanks. It's the same idea that you go to these sensory deprivation tanks, and it's the same type of thing. Our minds are constantly balancing ourselves. Even if we're just sitting in place or lying in bed, we're thinking, whether we know it or not, like, oh, there's pressure on my back. I'm staying in a bed. We know our mind is actually... Yeah.
You just do it, yeah.
Firing things to know that we're, like, balanced or where we're at within our position. And when you go into these deprivation chambers, it actually shuts off and numbs all those subtle things that our mind is usually thinking about, and it puts us into that state, same type of thing as these repetitive motions. It puts people into these numbness type of state where you zone out, and these people can actually go into actual trances. And it's interesting because it reminds me of the Jews at the Wailing Wall, where they go back and forth. You ever see those praying?
Yeah.
And they're kind of bobbing their head back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I'm thinking, okay, which came first? Is the enemy mimicking something that the ancient Jews did, or are these Jews caught up in this whole trance-inducing movement unknowingly? I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it's just kind of odd. I notice patterns like this, and I don't know necessarily what to think of them, but I find it interesting.
Yeah.
The whole thing as well of the box that they have on their foreheads. They have this box that they wear on their foreheads, and I think that's supposed to be like third eye or something. What's the point of that?
Oh, yeah, they're phylacteries. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that's about, if that was given, but I've never really read about that in the Bible unless it's part of the Urim and the Thummim type things. But
yeah, I looked it up, and they actually can't. They seem to say that they don't even know necessarily the origins of them. There's different takes.
I know they've got a rope around their ankle when they would go into the Holy of Holies, so they could actually pull them out if they were if they were unholy when they went in there, they could drag them out so someone else wouldn't die.
I think that's where a lot of these things start as actual physical needed items, like things that were actual real, some sort of real item that then became symbolic at some point, due to not needing them or not having access to like the Holy of Holies, something to that effect,
Yeah.
And so that became just more of a symbol.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I wonder, how this all ties into the end times, and that this kind of sounds like people believe that they can be like gods and or even fight God, and that's like in Psalms 2, 1-4. It talks about that the nations will prepare to battle against God, and we read that and we go, what? What are they thinking? How could they even think of doing something like that? But they're so arrogant, now that, these people that are doing these things, that they really believe that they are immortal. They are the ultimate. And, and Psalms 2 talks about it, it could be that what maybe their end game is, that they're going to try to destroy God, because there is kind of this isn't all just technology and science. There's when you hear these guys, there is a spiritual aspect to it too.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just all.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the Tower of Babel part 2. It seems building this Tower of Babel. It's kind of interesting. I've been looking into what these symbols mean. I keep seeing these repetitive symbols as well. One of them is always the spiral symbol that you'll see in New Age and occult ideas, and it's kind of like the swastika. You'll see versions of the swastika, and supposedly what they say this means is the mixing, or it's supposed to mean twirling or mixing up the dualities. So once again, back to making the dualities, instead of separating this is good and this is evil, they want us to mix it all up and make the waters muddy to where you cannot recognize good from evil. It's all becomes one, and that's the reoccurring theme of the occult, is so people will not recognize evil. They want you to embrace them both as good and evil.
So transhumanism, their basic agenda, what they want is they want human immortality. They don't want to have any suffering, starvation, disease, or disabilities. They want perfect bodies and be immortal. Is that really that's kind of their agenda? But, the Bible says that, some people will get these things, but only through the blood of Jesus Christ. and yet they're
Yeah,
trying to do it without God. Is basically what they're doing. They're saying, by our technology, by our know-how and our ingenuity, we don't need God.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why they think they can battle against God.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think, Ray Kurzweil talks about that when he was 5 years old is when he came up with these ideas.
Yeah.
His ideas of wanting to become a god, he understood transcendence and magic at 5 years old, he's quoted as saying. And when he was 7 years old, he created a puppet theater that was like, and he explains it as a virtual reality world with a command station where he could manipulate the sun, moon, and stars and characters off the stage with these connected linkages to control his own universe. And so at 7 years old, he was already trying to be his own god, he says, within his puppet universe and understanding transcendence. And at 12 years old, in the 1960s, he had access to some of the very first computers that were out there. And he actually created a computer from scratch at 14 that told the difference. This is Ray Kurzweil, yeah, that told the differences between different melodies and different sounds. And this was kind of the first step in pattern recognition. And this is how all of our technologies are now based off, is recognizing patterns.
Wow, this is Kurzweil? Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is what facial recognition is based out of, speech recognition. This is where all of digital sounds come from. Ray Kurzweil is the person who invented the modern-day synthesizer in the help of Stevie Wonder back in the 60s. He invented the synthesizer, which was able to actually play a sound that sounded like a piano, exactly like it, but it wasn't a piano. Before then, everything sounded mechanical and not quite there. And this was all done. We take that stuff for granted, but think about that. The idea that we can create sounds. You think about the ringtones that you can have on your phone with just such a small speaker that can mimic all these sounds, and we take those things for granted. But just 20 years ago, they didn't have anything like that.
No, yeah, that's right. Everything was the old MIDI files, I think is what they called them. They were just all,
And none of this stuff has mass, kind of like what you're saying. All the instruments, there's no reason to have instruments anymore. You can throw those all away because it's all digital. It's like, and everything's become like that. It's a foreshadowing of everything. Yeah. That's how everything will be. That's what they want everything to be, a digitized version of reality.
Yeah.
Whether it's music, whether it's transportation, whether it's our bodies itself, that seems to be the end game. And the creepy thing about a lot of this stuff, there's actual Oxford professors that are trying to push these ideas for prisoners, for the worst of all prisoners, to create an eternal digital hell, as they call it, for punishment. So they want to create like time-altering drugs that makes like a prisoner feel like he served 1,000-year sentence in only like one day.
Wow.
That way they can just take him out of prison and say, "Oh, you're done. You served 1,000 years, and we're done with you."
Yeah.
Or make people feel like they're in eternal pain or punishment, but actually kept alive in sort of a digital construct. And this is Oxford University professors.
Wow.
These are the people moving these things. This is basically the exact same storyline of the movie Demolition Man over 20 years ago. Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, I remember that.
He's in a state of suspended cryogenic animation as a prisoner.
Yeah, and he comes back.
Yeah, they take him out.
This has been...
To
There's
fight
been hundreds of movies about this, hasn't there?
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing how many storylines are out there that we just kind of like forget and take for granted. But you put them all together, it's overwhelming. I mean, it's like, wow, did all these people just get together and decide to write these things? And that's where the idea of the muse, or this idea of the evil oppression of the masses that don't have the protection of the Holy Spirit, they're open and susceptible to basically to be part of that hive, just basically directed like ants to do things that they don't even know they're doing.
Yeah. Wow. So now these guys that are pushing, Kurzweil and all these guys, what's their worldview? I mean, are these guys occultists? Are they evolutionists? Are they atheists? What?
Yeah, they're atheists. They're atheists, or they believe that man is God. When actually they asked Kurzweil that, do you believe in God? And he said, not yet. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
He's not there yet. So, well, once I become a god, then I'll believe in him.
Yeah.
So Kurzweil predicted that one person will be smarter than the combined comprehension of all beings. That's the whole idea. In the media, they've called it the Buck Rogers version of the hypothetical Christian rapture.
Yeah.
And it's a world transforming event. I mean, that's what they're big into. They want to make it happen.
You talked about the Tower of Babel, a little bit ago, and it makes me think about how the world was at that time. They all spoke one language. They had a very Nimrod was their leader, had arrogance, and he basically wanted to become a god. And he said, let's create this tower to reach gods, but it was basically to become gods, is really what it was about. And you wonder how much technology that they could have achieved if they would have been allowed to continue for another 100 years. They probably could have got past where we are now. If you just look at how fast we have progressed, because we basically have got one language again right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I think the people that are big into this are huge into the idea of the Tower of Babel. I mean, you go to McMiniman's bar in Oregon, any of the McMinimans, you'll see the breweries that they make their beer at is all in Masonic lodges. And I mean, it's places like that, even just an Oregon brewery.
Oh, wow.
That it's everywhere.
Yeah. They always have that, that sun, the sun, the creepy sun and moon symbol that you see in a lot of these occultic things. They always have that on there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I think the people that are big into this are huge into the idea of the Tower of Babel. I mean, you go to any of the McMinimans, you'll see, go to McMinimans.com, and their logo is the Tower of Babel, and each one of their breweries, the breweries that they make their beer at is all in Masonic lodges. And I mean, it's so subtle in little places like that, even just an Oregon little brewery, that it's everywhere.
The witches.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah. And the all-seeing eye, and they'll have the black rabbit. But yeah, it's crazy. The whole, the idea of a unicorn as well. A lot of people see the unicorn a lot of times in this cult symbology. If you look at a lot of these bloodlines, supposedly the idea of the unicorn is all about the horn, the spiraling horn, and that it represents the Tower of Babel. So it's supposed to just be a secret symbol of the Tower of Babel symbology, the swirl, the spiral.
Wow.
And looking down at the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
Is the same concept of this swirling idea of reaching the heavens.
Yeah.
They merge the yin and yang and the good and evil together.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that about the McMinimans and those other things. It's just everywhere. These so many people that are just out in the open, and unless you can recognize these symbols and understand what their real agenda is, you wouldn't even recognize it.
Yeah. So I was going to go over this a little bit, just real quick, the actual layout. I know we talked about that last time, of what this 2045 thing is. I know they've kind of laid out.
Yeah, I haven't even looked at that, so I'd like to hear about that as well.
So the 2045 initiative basically, lays out this timeline of what they expect to introduce at certain times, and from 2010 or 2015 to 2020, we're supposed to see the emergence of widespread and affordable Android avatars that are controlled by brain-computer interfaces, coupled with related technology avatars.
So these are things that are on your computer. They're like a talking face or something. Is that what that is?
Yeah, I think it's going to be with this virtual reality. So you put these headsets on, and basically, if you look at somebody else, they'll actually, you won't be able to see, you'll see all them moving around, but they'll be digitized to be whatever they want to look like. So if you're like some 500-pound guy and you want to look like some GQ magazine model guy, you can actually look that way if people have on those headsets. So you can take on the look of a fairy or a gnome or whatever you want to be, basically.
So this isn't you're not really changing your body with these.
Not at this
more
point.
of a online version of yourself, basically.
Yeah, at this point, it's just basically looking at other people and getting the idea of not being yourself and seeing other people not as themselves. And so, and then coupled with this, supposedly will be later on is the idea of actually being able to merge into other people's, and see their bodies from their perspective, or to merge into an animal and see an animal body fly an eagle to see what that's like or whatever. So I think they'll do a lot of that. And so to 2025, they're supposed to create like human life systems, a human brain-like robot avatar that will actually have the function of the cerebral cortex by the year 2025. So a patient with an intact brain will be able to return full functionality of their body. And so it's all going to be packaged as, helping people that are in comas.
Wow. So is this a robotic life that they actually control with their own mind, like the guy's, maybe in a vegetative state, that they can hook up electrodes to him and he can
communicate,
manipulate a robot or something, or maybe an online,
or actually be able to be able to see and hear without even his eyes or ears, eyes open. So connected into this interface to be able to communicate with his family on some level, even though he's in a vegetative state, just through the firing of his brain synapses. So,
well, that makes sense. They're already on the, we talked about that brain mapping where they can actually predict what someone is looking at just by looking at their electrical map of their brain.
Yeah.
So they can basically determine if someone is what they're thinking, even if they're in a vegetative state.
Exactly.
You can see the application of that technology already being used in those people and say, hey, what are they thinking about? Are they, what is vegetative state? They could actually probably answer that question.
Yeah, all they got to do is grow the database, and that's what Facebook's going to allow. So we're going to automatically give them.
We're the guinea pigs.
We're giving them over all of our database. Once people plug into this, then they're not only given into all their. We started with giving them all our pictures, tagging all our photos. And when they tap into our brains, then they got our memory, and they use those memory files just like they use these YouTube videos now. But memory files are much larger. Now you have unlimited versions of every size, shape, and form of everything anyone has ever seen to create much more realistic identification mappings of these systems that will actually, correlate the firing of the brain to photos or pictures and line them up to be more and more realistic. I mean, the ones they show right now, you can see if somebody looks at a human, all of a sudden it's showing a human form on the other side. It doesn't look exactly like them, but you can definitely tell it's a human. The shapes are there, and so you can see that all they need is a little bit more data. And once they add those files or that data into it, it just becomes finer and finer tuned, just like our old Atari video games, a Pong compared to PlayStation 4. I mean, that's where we're headed.
Yeah. There's actually a movie that's out right now called Divergent that actually uses that technology where they go into a dream state. They're given some kind of a drug, and then the person that's assessing their dream can see what the decisions they make. It's basically whatever choices they make during this dream situation determines what group in society they will be placed into. Or that they are most compatible with, I guess. So, but that basically is exactly what that the 2020 to 25 time frame is talking about, where they can see your thoughts.
Yeah. So it's crazy. They've lined this stuff out. I mean, it's 2030 to 2035, they say the creation of a computer model of the brain and human consciousness will be developed. And they'll be able to transfer individual consciousness from one carrier to another. So sort of like, changing people's brains or experience people's other realities, experience people's history. And I think they'll package it as all positive stuff, either like, hey, you can experience my dream, or we can see what Grandpa used to think, or, all these different things that'll be packaged as good things that anyone who's against them will just be a Luddite, that you just don't get it, you need to just evolve or die, basically. So.
Well, this is, I can see how this could lead to something like the Matrix, where people would willingly just put their bodies into a state just so they could be part of a completely different reality that they control. But, are we really going to control our reality? You mean someone else controlling our reality? It's really what would probably happen out of these situations.
Exactly.
But that is unbelievable. Where and that's only 15 years away. In 15 years, they believe that they can take your consciousness, and your consciousness has to be part of your spirit as well. Or like we said, the souls of men.
Yeah, that's what they say. The cerebral cortex is where the soul resides, supposedly. And that's what they're trying to duplicate through Facebook, through the, Kurzweil, all these people. By the time they reach 2045, this is when they say the new era of humanity will arrive, and all spheres of human activity, energy, transportation, politics, medicine, everything is just going to be merged into this oneness. And after that point, we'll just basically merge out into the entire universe as kind of like this, spirit entity or something. I don't know exactly how they propose to do it.
And that's the 2045? That's what will happen by 2045, they're saying?
Yeah. But he's got a lot more detailed timeline than this. I mean, they've got actual detailed things. And what's crazy is they actually have the details of what he predicted before. So you can go back to like 2009, for instance, or what he was predicting in the early 90s that would be happening around 2009. And this is what he said would be happening around 2009. And this, you can see how close maybe this is. Most books will be read on screens rather than paper. Most text will be created using speech recognition technology. Intelligent roads and driverless cars will be in use, mostly on highways, which is coming, called Google Chauffeur. I don't know if people have looked into that, but it's coming. That's people use personal computers the size of rings, pens, credit cards, and books. Personal worn computers provide monitoring of bodily functions, automated identity, and directions for navigation.
Yeah.
Cables will disappear. Computer peripheries use wireless communication now. People can talk to their computers and give it commands. People will be able to display built-in eyeglasses for augmented reality will be in use. Computers can recognize their owner's face from a picture or video.
Wow, yeah.
So he predicted that years and years before it actually happened. So this guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
It's and people that say, "Oh, this stuff's not going to happen," they don't understand how fast this stuff is changing. I mean, they're going to have they've already have Google, not only Google glasses, they have replacement eyeballs. There's a guy that's already replaced his eyeball with a fake camera.
Wow.
And once you can create an actual contact lens, instead of having to wear a big headset around, once they make it down to a contact lens that you can put into your eye that changes you into a virtual reality world, everyone you see becomes the avatar they wish to look like. When they look at you, they don't see you, they just see the avatar that you want them to see. And this video game, it doesn't look like a video game. Wow. It's indistinguishable from reality. That's the key. People picture video games, and you put this headset on, you picture being in a video game, and you can tell it's a video game. It's going to get to the point where you won't tell the difference. It'll be better than the reality. So what do you do with that? How do you escape this? How do you tell your kids not to play that game?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
where does it end?
Who can argue with that, really? I mean, kids are playing video games that are just silly now, and they're, addicted to them. And, how much more would everybody get addicted if you could, basically experience things, without actually having to do it. And they, say, hey, take a virtual trip to Disneyland for $29.99. Just, put on your glasses and do it. And you could literally experience it, or exercise, to get in better shape, or, learn to do something. The old simulators where you could simulate, learn how to basically fly a plane. Now you could do whatever, learn how to shoot a bow accurately, or, train MMA or whatever.
Yeah, totally. You could just have it downloaded instantly to have that information. To be a doctor, you're not going to have to go to college. You just basically buy the program, buy the software. Yeah, but, to put this into perspective, they're, handling subatomic particles and protons and electrons and actually manipulating them and making like single atom needles, like ultra sharp microscopic needles, to punch into DNA and manipulate DNA and to manipulate super small things in the medical industry. And like I said, they're 3D printing now things, sci-fi materials like graphene, and graphene is a 1 atom thick sheet of carbon atoms. Wow. So here's a sheet of material that's 1 atom thick.
Gee.
I mean, that used to be like actual something that they would like, dream about or write about in sci-fi, and now they're actually able to create this. And it has, really impressive physical characteristics. It's stronger than diamond. It's extremely conductive, which means it could actually have applications in electronics. They could make solar panels out of this stuff. Solar panels out of something 1 atom thick. And so when they start dealing with nanoscale technologies, it actually moves into this whole new realm, this whole new sector of reality that's like, it's like teleporter technology. I mean, it's like they say they could literally create a slug, for instance. They claim it really is, not any more complex than they claim a silicon chip with billions and billions of transistors. But if they could know the molecular structure and the genome of this slug, and they had machinery that printed, the molecules and had the raw materials, the carbon, the oxygen, and all the trace elements, they could actually create a slug in a 3D printer and replicate it. And so in their mind, they could actually create a transporter that would not transport you physically, but they would basically replicate you in another place and then kill the original.
Yeah.
Which there's a movie based off that, by the way, as well. I can't remember what the movie was, where they killed the original each time, and then the original survived somehow, and there were 2 of them out there.
Man, I can't remember. There's all kinds of them like that, where there's clones of each other. I mean, there's tons of them that are like the movie that had Tom Cruise in it, where he was in space, was basically that, where he had tons of himself.
Mm-hmm.
Him and his wife were both clones, and who was the real one?
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, it's like, where does it end?
Yeah, and then there's the one about the lady that's a fighter of all these zombies in a post-apocalyptic world that's has all kinds of clones of herself, and she's also half cybernetic, and they can control her with she's like a super soldier. So, there's so many different ones. Resident Evil, I think, is the movie. Based on a video game again.
No, the introduction of technology is just creepy. Going back to Golems, like we were talking about in the previous podcast, they actually have a thing online called the Golem Virtual Model and Control Room Simulator, and they refer this as a tokamak, which is an actual device using a magnetic field that confines plasma in the shape of a torus. And you can actually I guess somehow.
What's a torus?
Well, that's just, I guess, the shape that they use. I guess.
Oh, okay. Like a donut then, type looking.
Yeah, exactly. And so this field is basically somehow, they call this the golem, and these electromagnetics surround the torus, and they create this field and induces this plasma of some sort of electromagnetic type of thing. But it's all remotely controlled. It's a remote operated device, and a virtual model that these people call this golem. And you can look this up as well. And I don't know why they call it golem, but it's this weird looking machine, and they can tap into it online. And it seems to be connected to things having to do with, I don't know if it's splitting atoms or what, but it's some crazy stuff as far as creating this torus power.
Yeah. Well, I know there's a lot of really strange things with magnetic fields.
Yeah,
it's really interesting to me that they don't teach about magnetism or electricity in schools. They get a lot into the chemistry and things like that. Learning the elements and their atomic weights, but they don't really get into magnetism very much.
Yeah,
especially with experimentation. And I think it's because there's technology out there, that is just unbelievable. I know there's the guy that I've heard in the past that was able to make things disappear under intense magnetic currents.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a trained scientist, but he did all these things on his own. He's kind of like the mad scientist, and he was actually stole. He actually had to he went to jail for a while. He's not a bad guy, but he was stealing power, and he had to. He basically went up the power poles and got the big converters off the top so that he could do his experiments.
Oh wow!
Because he got so obsessed with doing them. So.
Wow. Yeah, there's some crazy guys out there doing all kinds of weird experiments. I mean, you just think about, we don't know what's going on.
Oh yeah, yep.
You look in the past as well, of what people were doing in the past in the integration of technology and people that were trying to, use puppets and different things they created as divination devices. It's pretty weird. There was supposedly in the 1540s, this guy created a mechanical flying beetle that was featured in a stage production. But this beetle was so lifelike that he faced accusations that it was work of the devil. And although he was charged with sorcery, and actually they brought sorcery charges against him and they were dismissed, and if he would have been found guilty, he totally would have been executed. But kind of interesting to find out who this guy was actually occultist and famous alchemist John Dee. So John Dee was a big magician, that was famous for his occult practices and looking into, his black crystal ball to tell the future and whatnot. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the guy that was basically making things disappear, I found him, I remember him from Art Bell Show, the old Art Bell Show, which is a great radio show that used to be on late night.
Sure.
The guy name was Madman Markham. And he's basically, nobody knows where he's went. But he did all these experiments with electricity, and he could basically throw bolts into this highly charged magnetic field, and they would disappear. And I think it's based upon the movie, The Philadelphia Experiment, where they actually made a whole ship kind of disappear or phase in and out of reality.
Yeah.
And who knows what's really happening with those things, but it's just interesting that type of information, that type of study is just kind of not done much. It really isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think we limit ourselves to think, well, if somebody's going to figure it out, it's going to be some big college out there or somebody with a lot of money and a lot of, technology and information. But the people in the older times didn't necessarily think that way. They were just, they didn't have anything to build off of. We're building off the shoulders of the past, where they were just, a lot of these people were just kind of trying to figure this stuff out on their own, or just had very little to no information to build off of. And so trying all these crazy different things.
Well, and unfortunately, the research laboratories and the universities are being funded by these giant corporations, and mainly because they want to make money. So what they're doing is they're trying to make drugs. So most of the information is done to make drugs that they can make money on selling to people that will supposedly, stop cure one little thing that you might have, but cause three other things to be worse. So it doesn't cure anything. It basically just masks a symptom is really what it does. It's just
they don't want to cure anything, then they'd be out of business.
Yeah, they don't want to cure anything. They want to continue to sell and drug you for the life of you. So that's where all the money's going. I think that's why they're not doing much research into things that actually would help mankind, because you can't make money if everybody had free power or all these other things. So, that kind of leads to this. Why are they giving us, all this, free Facebook and all this stuff? It's not free. It really isn't. We are giving them unbelievably valuable information, like I said before.
Oh, totally.
With all this data to be able to control us later. Yep.
It's all a setup. I mean, it has to be. I mean, even if they don't know that it's a setup, Mark Zuckerberg, if he's not even a part of it, it's still a setup.
Yeah.
It's, it's still part of this plan. I mean, you can see there's no way that all these people were writing about all these exact same things hundreds of years ago, basically, and it fulfills itself right in front of our eyes to be happening. And I mean, you look at how the creations in some of these ancient times were always connected to magicians and these people creating these weird things. There's all kinds of weird stories. I've collected a few more here too. There's this guy that was named Jacques de Vaucanson, and he had the ability to create in the 18th century these complex statues and robots, supposedly. And he had a statue of the statue of the Greek god of Pan, which stood up from its seat. It played its panpipes. It bowed before the audience, and then sat back down. A mandolin player that simultaneously played an instrument next to it sang, tapped in time with his foot, and had a frightening, lifelike appearance, and hissed and struck at an actress playing Cleopatra. And then there's other people that were creating all these other different devices that were like imitating natural forms of animals. Like the guy who created the kaleidoscope in 1868 supposedly made all kinds of other mechanisms. That he made a duck that supposedly had internal organs that would actually digest anything it ate. So you could put food in its mouth and it would go through a series of pipes and acid that he put it within these pipes that would actually digest it and came out like a false sphincter released through the bowels. Yeah. So he actually had this whole actual thing where it would drink, it would paddle, it would quack. It imitated the gestures of a normal duck. I mean, this is a complex machine, the way they describe it. And so some of these things they describe almost like a flying beetle and stuff. You think, was this real machines, or was there something else going on? It's like some of the magicians of today. Some of these magicians like David Blaine and some of these other guys do some pretty creepy things that almost seem on the realm or on the verge of being. Yeah. You wonder if there is some like real supernatural things attached into it, not just sleight of hand.
Well, that's you talked, were you at the beginning about the old show of the Greek gods, and they had the little owl, the flying owl, which is like a mechanical wind up made item, but it could actually fly.
Yeah.
And that was, I guess, in mythology as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there could have been devices created back in ancient times that may not have ran on the mechanics that we understand, but ran on some sort of spiritually induced mechanisms that were understood by them. It's like, I think the demons seem to work on whatever level the culture that they're in contact with. It's just like they won't appear as, animal and spirits and elves and fairies anymore. They appear as aliens now, because we believe in all that.
Yeah. That's what's being, propagated by the TV and everything is about, aliens, and that's probably the last deception is going to have some kind of connection to an alien deception.
But and is that part of it? Is it part of our so as our culture becomes more open to the idea of aliens, they're open to the idea of, whoa, maybe they can create real robots, maybe they can, as we begin to believe this, is that the trigger that makes the reality actually happen? This whole idea of, creating our reality, not that we are necessarily creating it, but that God is allowing it to be created at these set times when we are thinking about it or ready for it. I mean, it's which came first, that's where it's like hard to say. Ultimately we know that God is ultimately in control of it all. So his plan is unfolding, and he's allowing the enemy at his, decided time to be able to.
Our last we were talking about, genetic manipulation and DNA and all that kind of stuff, and and this transhumanism has a lot to do with uploading consciousness into technology, into computers and robots and things like that. But there has to be a spiritual, piece to this, because how can you get your real consciousness, your real you, into a machine? And maybe that's what's going to tie into, like you're talking about these golems and things where they were, putting in somehow consciousness into these inanimate objects. So there's got to be something else than just technology. Technology couldn't do it.
It's the intent. Yeah. It's convincing people that the intent exists. Convincing people that reality exists, then they'll believe it. Then they'll do it. Then they'll accept it. It's like, it's the same thing of like, you can't get everybody to take a hallucinogenic drug, but a lot of people will watch a video.
Yeah.
It's like you can't get people to, accept a demon willingly, but a lot of people will, play a video game. It's like, or listen to a song or all these different things. And so they're basically creating shortcuts to the same things they've always done, but present it in a way that we're fooled into accepting as something totally different, something that's somehow acceptable or somehow culturally the norm. So
you think Satan isn't going to use the genetic manipulation as much as he did in the past, where he's just manipulating our DNA, but instead he's going directly for our consciousness, directly for the real essence of man, instead of just corrupting the whole line, basically destroying all of mankind, by basically eliminating our bodies altogether.
Yeah. But I think he can, I think the demonic realm can access technology. I mean, if you look throughout, history, we have accounts of certain things like, I don't know if you've ever heard of the whole thing of the Ashtar Command broadcast, but like in 1977, there's this famous thing that happened in the UK where this broadcast came over the air, and there was all of a sudden this message and this voice that came on of this alien type face, and this alien saying, "We are the Ashtar Command. We have been here and the message from Earth," and started talking about the age of Aquarius and connections to bringing peace on Earth and all this kind of new age stuff. This is back in 1977.
Yeah, no, I've heard about that. And I think Karen Carpenter, the Carpenters, great singer that kind of went nuts into her career and died tragically, but she sang some songs that were really creepy about that incident. I think is what it was all about. She got into some of that stuff.
Yeah, people get it. Yeah, and that's what I think is that a lot of this is that MK Ultra. I mean, it's weird. There's, there's a guy, Roger Murnau. You can watch his amazing testimony online. He's a guy that claims he got deep into the occult in the 50s and 60s up in Canada. And I talked to him a little bit on the Lost podcast, but he claims he went into rooms like they asked him, hey, what kind of power do you want? You've gotten deep enough into the spirits now. What do you want? And they gave you different, things. And he went into a room one time where there was dozens of typewriters that were just typing out things automatically for these groups of lawyers and people within the media, typing out books and information for them. Uh-huh. Yeah, and I don't know, I mean, it sounds far-fetched, but we have a lot of different things that have come up like this.
Yeah. Wow.
In 1986, there was a professor that announced that he had recognizable images of like dead people that he had caught on tape on televisions. And they actually tuned in to some of these television stations. I remember they'd show things where they'd take a video camera and point it into the television picture, and so it would create this kind of infinite tunnel of going into this tunnel of just kind of taking a picture of itself over and over again until it just went to infinity, like a mirror,
like looking in a mirror with one behind you as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that this somehow would trigger these entities from other dimensions to appear, but only when they played it frame by frame by frame from a recorded background. And I remember, you can watch these videos where they show frame by frame and see all these pictures of people's faces and recognizable people that they said were dead. And one of the ladies that they have a picture of was a supposed channeler herself and deep into the occult before she died, and she was materializing her face on screen. So there's a lot of weird things like that have been reported.
Yeah.
And on computers as well. There's a guy in 1987, this architect's office in Stockton had many occasions at night where the cleaning ladies were there, and all of a sudden all the computers would start glowing and start typing things out automatically on the screen. Just weird off the wall type of things in like some like poems and weird things, and actually when they turned off they'd make these weird groaning sounds, and it just freaked out all the people that were cleaning there. And they went and checked out the computers, couldn't find anything wrong with them. They worked fine during the day, and then they just kept happening at night. They actually have video evidence of it over a 3-month period where they have all kinds of evidence of film of this happening, where these things are just turning on and writing things automatically.
Wow.
But
that's pretty crazy.
And that's like the Google car. That's what's kind of crazy and scary about the whole Google car. You know that once they did the whole Google Earth thing and Google Maps and stuff, why are they doing that? They're helping us out to give us directions, right? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They're mapping out every roadway so they can basically create software for autonomous cars, and they're going to make it They're going to make it. You won't have a choice. I don't think. Wow. I think when you on a major freeway or in the city, you're not going to have a choice to drive your car anymore. I don't think. You'll just have to go perfect speed limit. When they get you there, you'll get there, and that'll be a big thing. I think it'll be mandatory. And then what happens when they pull a Michael Hastings and automatically crash somebody into a telephone pole and call it a tragic accident or blip in the computer or whatever, when they actually wanted to get rid of somebody or something.
Yeah. I mean, we're going into an era that we could be controlled at every aspect and just have no control, no free will over our own lives. Maybe that's what they'll do. They'll say, well, we need to do these things because we don't want there to be any crime and all this stuff. But they'll commit crimes, but they'll stop everybody else from doing anything because everyone will be controlled. And if they think it, then they've got to be rehabilitated.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, there's always been in the Bible, there's been a concept that in the last days that anybody that takes the mark of the beast cannot be saved. And it's been something that's been debated a lot. And, some people have talked about that, that, in the past, it's always been that when you die, that's it. That's when you have had to have made your commitment of faith. Otherwise, you've got hell. But for some reason, in the end times, it's different. And if you take that mark, apparently you can't be saved.
Yeah, it's like a point of no return. Something changes.
And I'm wondering what, and a lot of people said, what is the mark? Some people say it's barcodes or some kind of thing, that some tattoo you got on your body. But, we're tying all these other things into it. Maybe it's that it ties in with that other verse that we talked about before, that your consciousness is uploaded. The mark is actually, putting your soul into a computer. Who knows?
Yeah. It seems to be something that changes you from human to non-human. And there's guys out there that talk about the idea of metallizing humans, that's their whole idea is they want to like somehow just bridging the format. Like if they can like tap into the metals within their bodies, then they could actually use that for wireless electrical impulses and different things. Or make your body a programmable biochip, like a biomachine that's programmable basically through an understood interface, just like a computer program is written or changed. Once you know the language of HTML, then you can now manipulate it, change it, add, subtract things. Same type of thing, that they would actually be able to map the biology and then just basically go in there wirelessly and just change it without even people realizing it. It's just
so it's like Neo or Mr. Anderson, from the Matrix, where his famous line is, "I know Kung Fu," because he got it downloaded into his body, and then he knows all these things, because it was just basically downloaded into his consciousness. And that sounds like it's a reality on this 2045 initiative.
Yep, exactly.
Or they'd like to make it a reality, I should say.
Yeah, no, I think it's like I said, I think it's one of those things where we're doing it to ourselves through the social media, through giving our information over, and as we do this, we become more dependent, and as we lose material and matter and replace it with digital ways of entertaining ourselves or even interacting and communicating with ourselves, where we can't even have anything physical anymore, where we won't have any wires anymore, and then they'll just get rid of phones and everything. It's just going to be instant communication. We're going to be put to the point where if you want to communicate, you want to talk, you want to be part of the grid, you got to be plugged in. You got to hybridize yourself into the transformed technology.
Yeah. They're already trying to get rid of the PC. If you've noticed, Windows 8, the worst operating system of all time, basically tried to merge your cell phone. It tries to make your desktop PC look like a cell phone with all these dumb little buttons that you think you can press with your finger or something. But and that's literally why they wanted to do it. The new generation is actually using their phones more than their PCs, and so why not integrate it to make the PC look like the phone? So if they ever do use a PC, it'll be just like their phone.
Well, we always got to think about the new generations. We come from the perspective of knowing the past and experiencing the past, where each generation that's born in only knows what they know. They've only experienced what they see, and to them it's not new, it's not different, it's not unique, and each generation kind of falls prey to forgetting the past and being a species with amnesia when it comes to really understanding what was happening, before we ever were living. We can hear stories, but unless you actually experienced it firsthand and see those changes happening, the kids of today, I don't think really have a clue of how fast things have changed, because they're just
they don't, and it's kind of crazy that how much has changed just in our lifetime, and then you even look back to our parents, how much changed in their life even more, and then look back to our grandma, grandpa. You just look at how much has changed in their lifetime. I mean, they've gone from basically combustion engine to space travel and transhumanism and artificial limbs and downloading consciousnesses and just things that are just amazing.
Yeah, that's where, can we really be surprised if around the corner some of these things are reality? Some of these things we've talked about tonight actually do come into existence. I mean, we have to be prepared. I mean,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think to remain in the dark and to remain ignorant and think, I think a lot of people are out there going, oh, yeah, this is going to be hundreds of years from now before they figure this stuff out. I won't have to worry about it. I'm going to be dead and gone, especially the older generations in the church, any older than 50 years old or so, they've kind of like aren't necessarily as up on the whole technology thing. And so they're kind of ignorant as to what's happening. And then we got the new generation that just is brought up into it. So they're ignorant of how much it's changed. And it's like the only people that are really seeing it are like part of it, actually working with computers, actually involved with it all as it changed. And not just seeing it from the outside.
Yeah. No, kids are just, they don't understand. What would a world be like without computers? I don't think they could fathom it.
Yeah. Really that's the other thing it creates is a dependency. And as they take matter away, they create the dependency on the virtual, where they say, oh, we're going to turn you off now, or we're going to, change your quality of life, basically, by, making you experience whatever we want you to experience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty crazy, and I think this kind of leads perfectly into talking with our next podcast. Going to talk about Noah and the Nephilim and how the days of Noah and a lot of things were happening as far as hybridization and the changing of mankind and how that overlaps into the end times.
Yeah, that the Noah movie came out. We both watched it. We were both pretty shocked, but at how far away it was away from the real biblical story. And most people that have seen, at least from the reviews, have actually, oh, it's a great story. Well, if it wasn't based on the Bible, it might have been a great story, even though it was kind of creepy, that the lead guy was actually a murderer and a crazy guy. But we'll go into the real biblical story of Noah and why that this Noah movie really isn't. It's very far from the real story.
Yeah, but it's kind of interesting because that kind of ties into the whole Nephilim thing as well. So I think the Nephilim thing and the Noah, our next podcast with Noah and the Nephilim will perfectly tie into maybe talking about that a little bit more as well. There's just so many things to talk about and not enough time to do it, it seems like. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that sounds great. So hopefully we, Transhumanism just has so many cans of worms in it that I don't think you can even touch it all, but at least we inform people, the base knowledge of it and that it's actually out there and people are what their plan is, So hopefully you can kind of see what's coming in the future and see if what these guys want to have happen will happen.
Yeah.
And I guess only time will tell.
Yep, that's for sure. No, we're seeing it unfold, and it's changing every day. And I don't think anybody out there has it totally figured out. It's just a matter of, staying grounded in the Word of God and taking it day by day, and know that definitely God has it under control. Most importantly, so just keep our heads held high. Don't be deceived. Don't be afraid. Because we're not to live in fear. We're not called to live in fear during this time. All these things are spoken about. We can be comforted and keep our heads held high during this time, knowing, be in anticipation of Christ's return, because all these things were written about. All these things have been decided beforehand. So These things we talk about are pretty creepy and pretty scary sometimes, but as Christians and as believers, we can be rest assured that, and even if we have to go through a lot of bad things here on earth, that life is a blink of an eye compared to eternity. So.
Oh yeah, yep. Well, hey, thanks to everybody, and give us feedback, and whatever you're interested in, let us know, and we'll do some research and we'll dig into it, like our show is called, digging for the truth.
Yep. Yeah, I know we didn't play a song tonight either, but I got one here at the end that we can play that I think ties in perfectly to kind of what we've been talking about as far as the fallen angelic realm and the merging of technology into spiritualism. This song is The Battle Between, and it kind of talks about how these spirits tap into humankind through so many different means. So thank you for all joining us tonight, and Neo, it was good talking with you. Until next time, we're going to close out here with The Battle Between. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Angels left their first estate to cohabitate with women in the days before the flood. And one of the things that they did was they taught mankind enchantments and root cuttings, this drug-related sorcery, the kind of things that you associate or connotate with classical witchcraft.
In every civilization, in every ancient culture, they have practiced divination. In every country and nation, humans have tried to reach the other side through meditation. Rituals and incantations, astral projection, altered state communications, some induce hallucinations, distort perceptions, ingesting mushrooms, psilocybin, salvia, ayahuasca, DMT, the cutting of roofs, the pharmakia, sorcery and shamanism, psychics with visions, channeling beings to possess them. They interact through invitation, spirits and demons who are familiar to the victims, entering those who don't resist them through open doorways, connections from other dark dimensions. They fabricate apparitions based on expectations to people open to suggestion, a hocus pocus fascination, presenting false illuminations with one motivation, to present an imitation, an altered explanation, poisonous intoxication. The serpent's venom's like a weapon that can change and mutate to always keep you guessing. 1/3 of the angels fell, good versus evil, heaven and hell. And now we're caught in the battle between the night and the darkness in places unseen. 1/3 of the angels fell, good versus evil, heaven and hell. And now we're caught in the battle between the night and the darkness in places unseen. Since the beginning, that plan never changes, but they adapt to the beliefs of the ages. In every culture and race, see their traces erased, all their origins lost in the mazes of time. All these places aligned with the similar tactics, interactions with mass-faced malevolent beings, creeping in with enchantments while seeming benevolent, teaching advancements to men with their origins evil in nature. This dangerous behavior enforced human labor, strung by the fingers, the strings of the puppeteer, pulling the leaders, led by the king of fear. Follow procedure, the spread of the greed, feed sneaky creatures deeper and deeper. Wolves among sheep that make signs off of wonders for wicked, adulterous generations who seek for a secret and reap what they sow as their sorcerers conjure elixirs, and spirits who speak through the sages and soothsayers, mystics and wizards and pastors. Leaders pour poison down throats of their listeners, twisting through words in their messages, offering counterfeits, magically turning their staffs into serpents, worshipping false gods on purpose. 1/3 of the angels fell, good versus evil, heaven and hell. And now we're caught in the battle between the night and the darkness in places unseen. 1/3 of the angels fell, good versus evil, heaven and hell. And now we're caught in the battle between the night and the darkness in places unseen.
There was an effort made by the dark forces to take the initiative to contact mankind and to introduce them and teach them these techniques.